Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Gopinath Shri Radhe Jaya Radha Gopinath Shri Radhe Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtottara-shata Srimad Divine Grace Abhay Srinaravindra Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtottara-shata Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Samavita Gaur Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This morning we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Canto 2, Chapter 3, entitled Pure Devotional Service, Text 21. Bharaha param patta kirita jushtam. Bharaha param patta kirita jushtam. Api uttamangam nanamen mukundam. Api uttamangam nanamen mukundam. Shavokaro no kurute saparyam. Shavokaro no kurute saparyam. Harer lasat kanchana kankanova. Harer lasat kanchana kankanova. Bharaha param patta kirita jushtam. Bharaha param patta kirita jushtam. Api uttamangam nanamen mukundam. Api uttamangam nanamen mukundam. Shavokaro no kurute saparyam. Shavokaro no kurute saparyam. Hare lasat kanchana kankanova. Hare lasat kanchana kankanova. Bharaha param patta kirita jushtam. Bharaha param patta kirita jushtam. Api uttamangam nanamen mukundam. Api uttamangam nanamen mukundam. Shavokaro no kurute saparyam. Shavokaro no kurute saparyam. Hare lasat kanchana kankanova. Hare lasat kanchana kankanova. We'll do Mangala churn. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamhayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Vancha kalpatarubhasya kripa sindhu bevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Word for word. Bharaha, a great burden. Param, heavy. Patta, silk. Kirita, turban. Jushtam, dressed with. Api, even. Uttama, upper. Angam, parts of the body. Na, never. Namet, bow down. Mukundam, Lord Krishna, the deliverer. Shavo, dead bodies. Karo, hands. No, do not. Kurute, do. Saparyam, worshipping. Harehe, of the personality of Godhead. Lasat, glittering. Kanchana, made of gold. Kankano, bangles. Va, even though. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Abhay Charnaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. The upper portion of the body, though crowned with a silk turban, is only a heavy burden if not bowed down before the personality of Godhead, who can award mukti, freedom. And the hands, though decorated with glittering bangles, are like those of a dead man if not engaged in the service of the personality of Godhead. Hari. Purport. As stated herein before, there are three kinds of devotees of the Lord. The first class devotee does not at all see anyone who is not in the service of the Lord. But the second class devotee makes distinctions between devotees and non-devotees. So we'll just go section by section. This first three chapters of Canto 2 are very structured because Parikshit Maharaj's question, as we remember from the end of the first canto, was what is the duty of a person who is about to die? And of course that pertains to everyone, not just a non-devotee or an atheist, but even to devotees themselves. So the first three chapters of Canto 2 are talking about different gradations of devotees, and here Srila Prabhupada is also talking about different kinds of devotees of the Lord as well. So we have to make that distinction. So the first chapter in Canto 2 started off by talking about a gross materialist. You could say a Shakta, not in the sense that he worships goddess Durga or Kali, but he worships the impersonal manifestation of the material energy in the form of material nature, mountains, rivers, technology, so many other things. All basically matter. So such a person, because he or she can only conceive of matter, because to them seeing is believing. So the way that they can start to appreciate the presence, the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as Shukadev Goswami is explaining to Parikshit Maharaj, is by contemplating on the universal form of the Lord. How the universal form of the Lord takes on different personal features, eyes, nose, a body, his waist, so many different things, different universal objects. The sun and the moon become his eyes, the rivers become his veins, etc. So by contemplating on material things in relation to some enormous personality, something beyond our grasp, something beyond our strength, something beyond our measly, meager opulences that we have, the materialist can start to appreciate the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So then after that, Srimad Bhagavatam explains in the second chapter of Canto 2, is that such a person can gradually start to internalize. As he becomes purified, he starts to internalize, and then he starts to appreciate the existence of Krishna within the heart, the Paramatma. So the example given in the second chapter of Canto 2 was a devotee, but he is attached to the yoga process, the Ashtanga yoga process, the Hatha yoga process, starting from Yama Niyama and then culminating in Samadhi, culminating in witnessing the Lord within the heart, and that's what the chapter is called. So such a, you could say, Yoga Mishra Bhakta, he gradually elevates himself, as the Bhagavatam is explaining, through different planetary systems, past Maharloka, past all the heavenly planets, and then he reaches Brahmaloka. And at the end of Brahma's lifetime, when all the residents of Satyaloka, they go back to the spiritual world, Vaikuntha, then such a yogi also gets liberated as well. Yesterday I was reading a purport in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and there Srila Prabhupada was talking of a slightly more elaborate process of such a devotee going back home, back to Godhead. Of course, a pure devotee can go instantly, just like Dhruva Maharaj or Saint Tukaram. So for them, the Vimana came, Prithu Maharaj, another example. So the Vimana comes from Vaikuntha and they go all the way back home, back to Godhead, back to Vaikuntha, back to Goloka Vrindavan. But Srila Prabhupada was saying that from Brahmaloka, there's a chance for another interim step, and that step is to go to Shivaloka. So Shivaloka, or Srila Prabhupada says Sada Shivaloka. So that is an abode which is in between the mature world, Devi Dham, and the spiritual world, Vaikuntha Dham. So that's how that person goes back home, back to Godhead. And then this chapter is talking about pure devotional service. So because, first of all, you're talking about a materialist, and all he or she knows is just the material energy. But then the next step, a more advanced step, is understanding, hey, I am not the material energy, I am not this body made of matter, I am the spirit soul. So let me start to pursue spiritual progress, understanding that identity. So then one practices Gyan Yoga. But then Gyan Yoga means just giving up material activity, but you don't know how to do spiritual activity, because in the starting of the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it's explained that the soul is always very active, and the soul needs to engage in work. So it can't be idle. So Jnani, it's just like a very feeble position, because it's a very tottering position, because you can't exist, the spirit soul can't exist for very long without engaging in some activity. Now the Jnani doesn't know about spiritual work, and he or she gives up material work. Therefore they go to the Brahmajyoti, but they don't stay there for very long as well. Aruya krishena param patam tada patanti nadata yushmad angreya. So they come back to the material world and they become, Srila Prabhupada mentions, philosophers and philanthropists and etc. So they want to do good to others. They do it in the mode of goodness, but still they don't liberate themselves from material activities. They come back down to the material world and they continue engaging in material activities. So the Ashtanga Yoga process is an in-between step between Jnana and Bhakti. Bhakti means giving up material activities and engaging in spiritual activities. Jnana Yoga means giving up material activities and not engaging in any spiritual activities, because one doesn't have knowledge of that. So in the Ashtanga Yoga process, one begins to render some preliminary steps in the spiritual progress to understand who is that personality that one should be rendering spiritual service to, spiritual activities to. So the Ashtanga Yogi comes to the realization that that person is actually Paramatma, but there's no relationship, there's no love, even there's no sense of duty, there's no dasya ras. So the relationship lower than that is Shanta. It's just you exist and I exist. And then in this chapter, pure devotional service, actually this chapter starts off by talking about the demigods. Yagyaschapi anye yajanti mam upasate ekatvena pritaktvena bahuda vishvato mukham. So the pritaktvena, Bhagavad Gita explains that one who considers that it's not only one Supreme Personality of Godhead, there's many, many Supreme Personalities of Godhead. In fact, 330 million. So then he worships anyone and everyone, which is of course not correct as well. So Srimad Bhagavatam is talking about different demigods in the beginning of this chapter, about different demigods and how by worshipping them one gets material benedictions. One's lusty desires are fulfilled. Actually, they're not, because elsewhere in the Bhagavad Gita it's explained that lust is like an ever-raging fire. And any endeavor one makes to fulfill lusty desires is just like adding fuel to the fire. So it's not possible for us to completely satisfy ourselves by fulfilling our lusty desires. The only way to do that is to just stop doing them and engage in some higher process, some higher activity, to develop some higher taste. Vishaya vinivartante nirahara siddhena rasovarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. So we need that knowledge, that param drishtva, that vision, and how to engage our senses in the mature world in such a way that we don't get entangled. This is a great science that Krishna is teaching us. The bhakti process is not a process of negation. Just like if you consider a spring, if I take a spring and the bottom section of the spring, the bottom end of the spring, if I hook it onto something on the ground, right? And if I stretch the spring, right, so that it's got a lot of tension on it, if I let go of the spring, then what happens? It's going to come back down onto the ground. It's going to hit with great force the place on the ground where it is attached to. Now, let's say, this is what bhakti is. Bhakti is the same thing. So we got the spring, and it's attached to some hook on the floor, on the ground. Now, if I stretch that spring, and if I attach it to some point on the ceiling, now there's no chance for the spring to come crashing back down to the floor. And in fact, if I, by cultivation of a higher taste, if I take the hook off the spring from the floor, then the spring is going to go, and it's going to go right to the top. So that's what bhakti is. So our process is not a process of negative detachment. In fact, our process is a process of positive attachment. And by positively attaching ourselves to Krishna, negatively detaching ourselves from matter is an automatic result of that. And we see this gradation of different yoga systems in Bhagavad Gita as well. Krishna, even in the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, he's talking about different yoga processes. Karma yoga. He talks about jnana in the middle section of chapter 2. And he also talks about jnana in the 4th chapter as well, cultivation of knowledge, and performing sacrifices with knowledge as well. And then he talks about Ashtanga yoga, obviously Dhyan yoga in chapter 6. But at the very end, he says, Yoginam api sarvesham mad gatin antaratmana shraddhavan bhajate mam same yukta tomo mataha. So Krishna is encouraging us from different ways. If one is a strong spiritual seeker, if one is a strong spiritual aspirant, and let's say you're on the karma yoga platform, then Krishna is encouraging you, hey, better than karma yoga is Jnana yoga. Better than Jnana yoga is Ashtanga yoga. Better than Ashtanga yoga is bhakti. So therefore, rise up. Come to the platform of bhakti. So if you have that utsaha nishya dhaira, if you have that conviction, enthusiasm, courage, good association, then Krishna is telling you, okay, you're on this level right now, but here's what's better than that level. So try to get to that platform. Now, if you look at chapter 12 of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is encouraging the devotees in a different way. So previously we just said that if someone is strong in spiritual life, Krishna is telling you what's better. If you're weak in spiritual life, then Krishna is telling you, okay, if you can't do this, then at least do this. If you can't do that, then at least do that. So Krishna is telling you the step lower, whereas previously, in the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, in particular, Krishna is telling you what's better. So in the 12th chapter, Krishna is saying, the best thing, Mayavamana Adatsva, Krishna is saying the best thing for you to do is to constantly meditate on me, to constantly render devotional service to me, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, as we know, 24 hours a day. Kalam nayed akhilam iti upadesha saram. Rupa Goswami says in the Upadeshamrita that the essence of all advice is to render non-stop pure devotional service to Krishna. How? In particular, he says, manasi niyojyam, he says rasana, he says by using the tongue, by using the mind to meditate on Krishna, by using the tongue to nicely glorify and chant Krishna's names. So that's how that's possible. So he says, the best level is to constantly meditate on me. If you can't do that, Krishna is telling Arjuna, then at least follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, which is what most of us are doing. That's called Vaidhi Bhakti. So we don't have a natural, spontaneous taste to render pure loving devotional service to Krishna, perhaps. So at least let's follow the regulative principles. Krishna tells Arjuna that wake up early, attend Mangalarti, chant a fixed number of rounds, study the Shastras, try to distribute this knowledge to others, etc. In essence, it means following the instructions of the spiritual master. Okay, if you're not so surrendered to be able to surrender to a spiritual master, to follow the regulative principles of bhakti, then Krishna says, at least perform work for my sake. So engage in karma yoga. So in the purport there, in chapter 12 of the Bhagavad Gita, in that particular verse, Srila Prabhupada is explaining that all religious, spiritual institutions, particularly those who are engaged in active preaching work and expansion work, they require all different kinds of support, monetary support in particular. So Srila Prabhupada mentions in that purport that such a person on that level, where Krishna says, at least work for me, Krishna says, okay, you can maintain some degree of independence, some degree of freedom, you can work as you want to work in the material world, but at least use the fruits of your labor to push forward the Krishna consciousness movement. So that's that level. Then Krishna says, okay, if you can't do that, then at least renounce the fruits of your activities, whatever you're doing. You don't have to renounce it to me, but at least be detached from whatever work you're doing. So there we have people who renounce their own free time, whatever they want to be doing, their own interests, and they work for other people. They may go to some poverty-stricken country, they may help other people rebuild their communities, they may give psychological help to other people, they may serve their nation by joining the army and fighting on the battlefield forefront. So this is sacrifice. This is sacrifice because we want to engage in sense gratification. The conditioned soul wants to engage in sense gratification. But that tapasya, it's not for Krishna, but at least there's some degree of detachment. So when we see people like that, who are sacrificing in some way, it may not be for Krishna. We should understand that these particular people are still on the progressive march to eventually becoming Krishna conscious. So the soul is still progressing. It's naturally becoming detached from material fruitive results. But the only thing is, because of a lack of knowledge, they don't know who to dedicate those results to. But it's still glorious in the sense that they're still following Krishna's instructions, at least according to the 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Then Krishna says, okay, if you are still very attached to the results, if you can't detach yourself, then at least cultivate knowledge. You have to cultivate knowledge about what this material world is, who you are. Is there some higher source of existence? Is there some higher platform of existence? Atato Brahma Jigyasa. That's one of the first aphorisms of the Vedanta Sutra. Now that you have a human form of life, then inquire. Inquire into this existence. Just like Yudhishthira Maharaj says that the most wonderful thing is that people see that everyone is dying all around them. Like I read that the coronavirus, at least in America presently, is the largest cause of death in the country. So people are dying in their thousands and thousands. Like another article which I came across was, and it just shows you the precarious nature of our existence in this world. So this happened in Detroit, in America. So of course the employees in the public transport section of society, they're still working. They need to work. They can't work from home. So this particular bus driver in Detroit, he was driving his bus, and into the bus comes a passenger. It was some woman, and she was very sick. She looked very sick, so she was coughing a lot, and it was not good because she was coughing on, all these passengers, and quite hysterically. And so this bus driver, he considered his duty, of course it is his duty, to tell this woman to stop coughing and to cover her mouth, or, and to perhaps escort her off the bus, which would have been better. But he wanted to maintain his professionalism. So although he told her, she didn't listen, but he told her several times, but she didn't listen. So she kept coughing. So anyway, as he found out later on, I don't know when, but shortly after that incident, that particular bus driver, he caught the coronavirus from this woman who was coughing, from this passenger who had gotten on the bus. And within 2 weeks, this bus driver passed away. So that's really far out, Just 2 weeks ago, there you are, you're doing your job, you're sacrificing on behalf of the society, on behalf of your nation, while everyone is working from home. These particular employees in society, they're working their job on the front line. And, by chance, by the will of providence, someone gets on the bus, coughs in your face, and that's it. And then you leave your body in 2 weeks. So our existence is very precarious. So that's why a Vaishnava knows, what is that verse? I forgot the verse, but basically it's saying that a Vaishnava never wastes any time. I forgot the verse. That's okay. So Krishna is encouraging us in both ways in the Bhagavad Gita. And this particular chapter, it starts off by talking about demigods. But before we talk about demigods, let's read a little bit more, because the demigods also fall into a particular section of devotees. So the second-class devotees, Prabhupada is saying, are therefore meant for preaching work. And as referred to in the above verse, they must loudly preach the glories of the Lord. The second-class devotee accepts disciples from the section of third-class devotees or non-devotees. Sometimes the first-class devotee also comes down to the category of the second-class devotee for preaching work. So that is the example of our very own Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada is a Nitya Siddha devotee of the Lord, and his spiritual master as well. Of course, we know Bhaktivinoda Thakur prayed to Krishna to send a ray of Vishnu. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was born as one of the children of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and we know that he came directly from the spiritual world, and Srila Prabhupada mentions the story where Lord Jagannath's Ratha Yatra cart got stuck right in front of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's house, and the garland of Lord Jagannath fell into around the neck of little Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur at that time. So it was foretold that he would be a great devotee of Lord Krishna, and he would propagate Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. And as was the case with Srila Prabhupada as well, we learn in the Lilamrit that when Srila Prabhupada was born, the astrologer mentioned that Srila Prabhupada would become one of the most richest people in India, and also he would renounce the world at an advanced age, and he would engage in propagating spiritual culture abroad as well. So that prediction was made as well. So devotees like Srila Prabhupada and his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, they're Nitya Siddhas, they're Mahabhagavats. But for the sake of preaching work, they descend to the Madhyama platform. Now the demigods are not exactly considered to be on the Madhyamam platform. It's very rare. We don't see so much examples of demigods preaching Krishna consciousness. The demigods are what is called Sakam Bhaktas. So they are devotees of Lord Vishnu, of Lord Krishna, but they will approach Lord Krishna, especially when there's some great danger to them, when perhaps their sense gratification is hindered, when it's put on the line. At that time they will remember, oh, let's approach Lord Vishnu and let's establish our supremacy within the universe, our kingdom over the universe, over the demons, so that when the demons are subdued, then we can continue enjoying within this mature world. But they're still considered to be devotees. The demigods, although they're empowered administrators, they're still dependent upon Krishna. Like in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the explanation is given of the Vishwarup, the Virat Rup manifestation of Krishna, which is the material form of Krishna within this universe. So there, Shukadev Goswami is explaining that when the Virat Rupa generates its eyes, his eyes, in the form of the sun and the moon, so it's explained that the demigod of vision, so in this case it's, I think it's either Agni or Surya, I can't remember. But anyway, that particular demigod, he enters the eyes of the Virat Rupa along with the organ of eyesight, which is the eyes, the eyeballs. And upon entering and connecting with the Virat Rup manifestation, that's how the living entities, like you and I, get the ability to see. Or for instance, there's another demigod called Anila. So Anila is a demigod which is responsible for the tactile sensation that we all feel. So when the Anila demigod positions himself on the skin of the Virat Rupa, along with the sensory organ, the skin itself, that's how the living entities get the ability to sense things with their skin, to feel things with their skin. And same is the case with, for example, hearing, which are the demigods of the directions. When they enter the ear holes of the Virat Rupa, along with the sense organ, the ear itself, then the living entities get the ability to hear. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gives a nice story, and we've heard Srila Prabhupada give this analogy quite often in his works, in his Bhaktivedanta purports. But the story comes from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, where he talks of the foolish gardener and the stupid pundit. So this is a story where a wealthy landlord, he was a very strict landlord, very wealthy landlord, he needed some gardening work done, and he needed some yagyas performed in his household. So he goes and he hires what he considers to be a very smart pundit and a very smart gardener. So he employs them in his huge mansion household. And one day he's strolling in his garden, and alongside his garden, and he sees the gardener that he hired working very hard, and at least he's putting on a show, he's working very meticulously. And when he looks closely, this gardener is actually not watering the roots of all the plants, but he's very carefully watering all the leaves and all the flowers and all the twigs and all the branches of all the plants and the trees in the garden. So he goes up to him and he starts to chastise him. Hey, don't you know, oh foolish gardener, that by watering all these other different parts of the plants will still die. You have to water the root. So he was a very foolish gardener. So, okay, he wasn't qualified. So that's when he found out. That's when the landlord found out that actually this gardener was very foolish. So he shook his head and he continued walking inside his house. And then he came across the stupid pundit who had just finished performing some yagya. God knows what yagya he performed. But it was time to honor the prasad. So he saw this pundit, and he was taking little morsels of prasad, and he was shoving them up his nostril, and he was shoving them in his ear hole, and he was trying to put some prasad into his eyes. And when questioned by this landlord, "Oh, stupid Pandit, why are you putting this prasad in all these different orifices of your body? Don't you know that you should be putting it in your mouth? If you put the prasad in your mouth, when it goes to the stomach, then all your other organs will be satisfied and nourished." So the Pandit replied to him that, "Oh, is that the case? Actually, I thought that because all these senses are working so hard for me, they must be very fatigued. So I thought that I should, feed them one by one, paying very close attention to them individually." So of course that is not the case. But that is what we are doing when we worship demigods. When we want a particular thing, we worship a certain demigod, but actually that is not satisfying the soul. We can only satisfy the soul when we pour water onto the root of the tree, which is watering Krishna, or rather, the nice example is given that by attentively chanting, hearing and chanting, we are watering the creeper, the bhakti creeper, by hearing and chanting Krishna's names. And I like the point that Nityananda Pran Prabhu said a couple of weeks ago on this topic of demigods. And he said basically that the demigods, if one worships the demigods, then what happens is that in the grand scheme of things, it's actually something beneficial, because material benedictions don't satisfy us. So by worshipping, if you're lusty for something, and if you worship a particular demigod, and you get your material desire fulfilled, and you get whatever thing you want, a nice spouse, or a nice car, or a nice job, or whatever. You become attractive, you become famous, whatever. Then your karma still plays on you, and that material thing eventually is not going to actually fulfill yourself. It's not going to fulfill your soul, because as the Gita says, yehi samsparshaja bhoga dukkhayo na yevate adyantavantakonchya na teshu ramate buddha. That when the senses interact with the sense objects, because the sense objects are impregnated with misery, and because the soul is looking for lasting happiness, but material sense objects simply offer us happiness which is temporary and flickering, ultimately it results in misery. So a wise person does not engage in in that type of happiness. Then when we worship demigods and we get our desires fulfilled, eventually we come to the realization that whatever I prayed to for this particular demigod, it didn't fulfill me. So let me stop praying to the demigods. So that's a progressive step, whereby one stops to reach out to some higher personality to fulfill material benedictions. And gradually, through more purification, one stops worshipping the demigods completely and then moves to worshipping Krishna. Not for something material, but for bhakti. I remember something Chaitanya Charan Prabhu was saying in a class, or it was on his website, the Spiritual Scientist website. One of them, I can't remember, but there was an article, or he was saying in the lecture that the Pancha Upasana system, which was introduced by Shankaracharya to bring the Bharatavarsha back under the Vedic umbrella, because of course it was the Buddhist philosophy was prevailing in Bharatavarsha at that time. It's a nihilistic philosophy, it's an atheistic philosophy. So Shankaracharya wanted to bring Bharatavarsha back under the Vedic umbrella, because previously there were people who were using the Vedas to justify killing of animals. So Buddha came and he preached the philosophy of ahimsa and he rejected the Vedas. Shankaracharya brought it back, but he mentioned that you can worship anyone. You can worship Devi or Shakti. You can worship Surya or the sun. You can worship Lord Ganesh. You can worship Lord Shiva, or you can worship Lord Vishnu. So it's called Panchopasana. Panchopasana means the 5 types of worship. And take your pick according to your fancy. If you're feeling more attracted to Lord Shiva, okay, worship Lord Shiva. If you have some sentiment towards Ganesh, okay, worship Ganesh. And it doesn't matter, because at the end, they're all one, and you're going to get the same outcome, the same benediction by worshipping all of them. So of course, Shankaracharya knew what he was preaching was wrong, but at least it was an interim step to bring everyone back to, from complete atheism, from complete sense gratification, to accepting some higher Vedic authority like the demigods, like Ganesh and Parvati and Lord Shiva, and etc. So Chaitanya Charitamrita was mentioning that Bhaktivinoda Thakur analyzes this more as an evolution of consciousness. So that's the Vaishnava perspective. So he explains that the gross materialist, or so the gross materialists, which was outlined in the first chapter of Canto 2, he worships Devi, Shakti, because that's all he can see. So he worships that which is tangible, the material energy. Now through gradual purification, one comes to understand that energy, in particular material energy, it has a universal source. And the universal source for all the material energy is the sun. So the evolutionary process in consciousness from being a Shakta is then to become a Shaurya, the worshipper of a sun. And we see examples of sun worshippers if we study ancient societies throughout the world, just like the ancient Persians, or the Persians. They were worshippers of the sun, and certain in the Middle East, as well as in Greece, there were people who used to worship the fire and worship the sun. We have that in India, in Bharatavarsha as well. Demigod worshippers who worship the sun. We have the famous yoga exercise called the Surya Namaskar, which is actually it's actually a namaskar that yogis do as the sun is rising. So it's a salutation to the sun god. So the next step, after understanding that the material energy has a source, which is the sun, but the thing is that the sun itself is still impersonal. There's no personality behind it. So the next step in understanding is that energy has a source which is actually conscious and not impersonal. So energy has a source which is conscious. So then they go to worship a conscious source which is not so elevated in consciousness. So they go to worship animals. So, okay, energy has a source. The source is consciousness, but they start off by worshipping lower forms of consciousness, like animals. We learn in Chaitanya Bhagavat, and I can't remember, maybe in Chaitanya Charitamrita, how before Lord Chaitanya's time in Navadvip, there were people who were worshipping animals, they were marrying animals together, and so many different things. We see also in the, for example, ancient Egyptian culture, how they're worshipping different animals as well. So this is something prevalent not only in Bharatavarsha, but all throughout the world, in different cultures and different societies. When we talk about yogis, jnanis, and karmis, and devotees, these things are very much prevalent all throughout the world. It's not something sectarian. So the people who worship these lower forms of consciousness, they are the Ganapatayas. They worship Lord Ganesh. From that, they evolve to worshipping a more higher form of consciousness, great men, great leaders, rulers in society, great scientists. So that's akin to worshipping Lord Shiva, because Lord Shiva is considered to be, Vaishnavanam Yatha Shambhu, Lord Shiva's consciousness is extremely elevated. But it's not the supreme consciousness. It's not Krishna consciousness, not Vishnu consciousness or Narayan consciousness. So the Ganapatayas, they eventually become Shaivites. The next step is understanding that consciousness is actually transcendental. Consciousness itself has a transcendental source, and that is Vishnu. So they become Vaishnavas. So that's the gradual progression in the elevation of consciousness amongst different classes of people. So we'll continue reading. The second class devotee accepts disciples from the section of third class devotees or non-devotees. Sometimes the first-class devotee also comes down to the category of second-class devotee for preaching work. But the common man, who is expected to become at least a third-class devotee, is advised herein to visit the temple of the Lord and bow down before the deity, even though he may be very rich or even a king with a silk turban or a crown. So many times we learn of devotees who are materially very qualified, and especially back in the 70s and the 80s, they joined the Hare Krishna temple full-time, and what were they given? They were given a broom, or they were told, okay, go and wash the pots. So my Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Devamrita Swami, he explains such an instance happened to him. He's a Yale University graduate, so he comes from a very materially prestigious background, but when he joined the temple, he was just given some menial task to do. So it's a really challenge. It's something which is a real challenge to the ego, especially in the beginning when you're not very purified. You expect people to glorify your material position when you come into the Krishna consciousness movement. Of course, I'm not talking about my Guru Maharaj, but all these sannyasis and gurus, direct disciples of Srila Prabhupada, are very glorious. They're pure devotees. They're still carrying forth Srila Prabhupada's ISKCON movement, so we should not talk about them. But generally, when one is a materialistic neophyte devotee, one expects that other Vaishnavas should glorify his material qualities. I remember Sadaputta Prabhu was also mentioning, I think he came in to the Krishna consciousness movement as a PhD from some university. And he came in like that, and same thing, he was either told to wash the pots, or he was given a broom or a cloth and was told to wipe the temple room floor or broom the temple. And then after some weeks, some months, then the devotees realize, hey, this person is actually very maturely qualified. Maybe he can engage these skills in Krishna's service in that way. So here Prabhupada is saying that you may be a great king with a silk turban, but still you should bow down before the deity of the Lord. The Lord is the Lord of everyone, including the great kings and emperors, and men who are rich in the estimation of mundane people must therefore make it a point to visit the temple of Lord Sri Krishna and regularly bow down before the deity. The Lord in the temple is a worshipable form and is never to be considered to be made of stone or wood, for the Lord in his Archa incarnation as the deity in the temple shows immense favor to the fallen souls by his auspicious presence. By the hearing process, as mentioned herein before, this realization of the presence of the Lord in the temple is made possible. As such, the first process in the routine work of devotional service, hearing, is the essential point. Hearing by all classes of devotees from the authentic sources like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam is essential. The common man who is puffed up with his material position and does not bow down before the deity of the Lord in the temple, or defies temple worship without any knowledge of the science, must know that his so-called turban or crown will only succeed in further drowning him in the water of the ocean of material existence. So the higher they fall, the higher they climb, the harder they fall. That's the case of someone who denies the existence of Krishna. Like, I think it is Ravana who tried to build a staircase to heaven. So he fell pretty hard at the end when he faced Lord Ramachandra. A drowning man with a heavy weight on his head is sure to go down more swiftly than those who have no heavy weight. A foolish, puffed-up man defies the science of God and says that God has no meaning for him. But when he is in the grip of God's laws and is caught by some disease like cerebral thrombosis, that godless man sinks into the ocean of nescience by the weight of his material acquisition. Advancement of material science without God consciousness is a heavy load on the head of human society. And so one must take heed of this great warning. The common man, if he has no time to worship the Lord, may at least engage his hands for a few seconds in washing or sweeping the Lord's temple. Okay, so here Srila Prabhupada is going to talk about Maharaj Prataparudra, which Bhava Bhushan Prabhu was mentioning yesterday as an example of determination in the service of Krishna, or to gain the favor of Krishna. Maharaj Prataparudra, who is a great king, and he wears a crown, a heavy crown, but let's see what he did. The greatly powerful king of Orissa was always very busy with heavy state responsibilities, yet he made it a point to sweep the temple of Jagannath, Lord Jagannath at Puri once a year during the festival of the Lord. The idea is that, however important one may be, he must accept the supremacy of the Supreme Lord. This God consciousness will help a man even in his material prosperity. There's a nice verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Mahaprabhura Bhaktaganena Vairagya Pradhan Yahan Deki Tahan Priti Gaura Bhagavan. So, all the followers of Lord Chaitanya who are very dear to him have one qualification in common. They're Vairagis. They're completely renounced and not attached to material things, both tangible things as well as subtle sense gratification like adoration, distinction, name, and fame. And Priti Gaura Bhagavan. So to Lord Chaitanya, this brings a lot of joy, this particular quality of vairagya or renunciation of material sense gratification. This God consciousness will help a man even in his material prosperity. Maharaj Pratap Rudra's subordination before Lord Jagannath made him a powerful king, so much so that even the great Patan in his time could not enter into Orissa on account of the powerful Maharaj Pratap Rudra. And at last Maharaj Pratap Rudra was graced by Lord Chaitanya on the very grounds of his acceptance of subordination to the Lord of the universe. So even though a rich man's wife has glittering bangles made of gold on her hands, she must engage herself in rendering service to the Lord. I'll just finish with this story. I think it's two stories of Alexander the Great. One story, which I heard, was how when Alexander the Great, he came to India, he was very curious of the culture. He appreciated how people were very advanced in their consciousness and how evolved Vedic culture was. So he was very curious. So as he reached the borders of India, it is said that he told a small group of his soldiers to actually cross the border into India and to tell the people there that the Son of God, the emperor, the mighty emperor of the whole world has come, and that everyone should, prostrate before him, otherwise they would be killed. So the soldiers of Alexander the Great, they crossed into Bharatvarsha, and then the first person that they saw was a yogi, a Brahmana yogi, who was completely renounced. All he was wearing was a kopan. And they went up to him. He had no possessions. And they went up to him and they said, "You have to surrender to Alexander the Great. He has conquered all the countries from Macedonia, and he has come to your land now. He is the Son of God. He is the ruler of all the lands. So, prostrate before him and surrender your life before him. Otherwise, we will behead you right now." So this yogi's reply to the soldiers were that, who does this Alexander the Great think he is? There is only one king in this earth. There is only one ruler of this whole material manifestation, what to speak of the earth. And that is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna. Your king, Alexander the Great, can only instill fear into people who are after wealth. And your king, Alexander the Great, can only instill fear into people who think they are the body. As a Brahmana, as a follower of the Vedic culture, I do not aspire after wealth, nor do I consider myself to be the body. So you can just, about turn and